Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about forecast errors. Forecast errors is the difference between the demand and our forecast value. So every time we try to forecast how much the demand will be, we get a value which is different, most of the time is different from what the demand is. So this difference between how much the demand is and how much we forecast the demand is the error, okay? So all forecasts contain some level of error because it's really hard to predict exactly how much the demand will be. And we have two main sources of error. One of them is a bias, when we make a consistent mistake every time we try to forecast the demand. And we have a random error, which is not explained by the model we're using to forecast the demand, and this is simply random error. We have these five types of measures of error, okay, and I'm going to talk about them the next slide. So forecast error measurements. The first one is the mean error, which is simply the mean error for all periods of time we are trying to forecast. For example, this number means the demand at time t, and this is the forecast of the demand at time t. So if you have the demand and the difference between the demand and the forecast, this is the error. If we take for 3 months and divide by 3, we get the mean error. Okay, so we're summing the errors and taking the average. Taking the average for the errors. That's basically what we're doing. And the mean square error, we are getting the errors and we are squaring them. So we take the errors, we square, sum them, divide by the number of observations or periods of time, and we get the mean square error. And then we have the mean absolute deviation, and this one is getting the errors, the difference between demand at time t and how much we forecast. We take the error and we take the absolute value, and we sum all the absolute values and divide by the number of periods we're forecasting the demand. And then this is how much on average we are deviating, our forecast is deviating from the actual demand. Okay, ideally we want these errors to be zero. We want all these measures to be zero, because if they're zero, means that we have a very good forecast model, because the forecast value is very close to the actual demand. However, if you have large values of these error measurements, then means that our model is less accurate. Okay. Finally, the last two forecast error measurements are the mean absolute percent error. This one is the forecast error, the mean absolute deviation, as a function of the size of the demand, the average size of the demand. So if we get the mean absolute deviation and divide by the average demand, we get the mean absolute percent error, okay, which is how much we deviate in absolute value in relative to the demand, okay, which gives us a percent. And finally, we have the tracking signal, which tells us if our forecast errors are accumulating over time. And this is basically measuring the direction of our errors. If it is positive, this means that our forecast, if the tracking signal is positive, this means that our forecast, we're forecasting less than what the demand is. So we're always forecasting less. And if it is negative, this means that we're always forecasting more than what the demand is. So if the final number is a big number, is a big negative number, this means that our forecast model is doing accumulating errors in forecasting more demand than what really is, and vice versa. So I'm going to stop this video here, and I'm gonna show you in the next video. I'm gonna show you in the next video how to solve this problem, and I'm gonna illustrate all these forecast error measurements using this problem from our class notes on page 34. The class note demand forecasting, page 34. We have this problem. I'm gonna talk about this and how to illustrate all these forecast error measurements in the next video.